Masechet Baba Batra Daf Kof Yod Dalid. We just discussed a case where someone is on his deathbed and there are three people that come to visit him. Those three people can act either as witnesses or as a bet din. If the person on his deathbed says, here's my will, I want you to give this land to this person and that land to the other person, then those three people can act as witnesses and sign a document, sign a will, or since there's three, they can also be a bet din if it's during the day. Now we're going to learn a halakha that's related to that. Itemar, kinyan ad ematai choser, a transaction. Until when can one of the parties renege on that transaction? Now it's not clear what case this is talking about. It seems that it cannot be talking about a case where I just come and buy fruit and I pick up the fruit that I want to buy. Once I pick it up, then the transaction is finalized, and the seller can't come back, can't go and say, hey, I want that fruit back. I already picked it up, so that's it. Or if I say, you know what, I don't want it anymore, give me back my money. Once you pick it up, it's definitely yours. So it seems not to be talking about that case, but rather it could be a case like we were just talking about. If someone's on deathbed and said, I want to give this land to this son and this much to that son and so on, and then he's still there and he says, you know what, I changed my mind. So what's the final point at which once that this happens, then you can no longer change your mind? Also, the commentaries say this would apply to a kinyan sudad, a symbolic exchange where I take a handkerchief, and by picking up the handkerchief, I give over to you some item or some land. In that case, since it's only symbolic, I'm not actually picking up the item. So also, I can renege on the transaction. Even after I picked up the handkerchief, still, since I didn't actually get the thing, there is a certain amount of time that I have, and I can still renege on the deal. It's kind of like if you close on a mortgage, you have 3 days, and you can say, you know what, I changed my mind. So how long would you have in such a transaction? Two opinions. Rabba Amar Kol Zeman Sheyoshvin, Rav Yosef Amar Kol Zeman She'oskin Beoto Inyan. Rabba says as long as the parties are still sitting in the same location, right? We were talking about, let's say in the deathbed case, all the people are there, the person who's dying is there, and the other people, they're still sitting there, even if they are sitting there for a while and talking about this subject and they want to go to another subject and so forth, and even if they stop talking about the will, as long as they're still sitting there, the guy on deathbed said, you know what, I know I said I want to give this to A, you know what, I changed my mind, I want to give it to B, and yes, he can change his mind. Or Kinyan Sudat, as long as they're all sitting there, someone can change their mind. Rav Yosef says, no, you don't have that long, a shorter time, it's only as long as they're discussing that particular matter, while they're discussing the will. And the guy on the deathbed says, I want to give this to this guy and that to that guy, and they're still talking about the subject, and he says, I changed my mind. He can change his mind anytime they're talking about the subject. But once they complete that subject, and someone says, how are the Yankees doing? And they go on to a different subject, then that's it. They can no longer go back to the original subject. Now we're going to try to bring a proof. Amar Rav Yosef, Kevati didi mistabera. Damar Rav Yehuda, Shelosha shenichnusu lebaker et hachole. Rasu chotbin, rasu osindin. V'is al kadatech kozman sheyoshbin, lechush dilma hadarbe. Rav Yosef says, I have a proof from my point of view. Mine makes sense. That it has to be during the actual discussion, and once you close the discussion, then you cannot change your mind anymore. And I have a proof from the statement that we saw on the previous daf that Rav Yehuda says, if you have three people that come to visit a sick person, and the sick person is on his deathbed and he's giving over his will, those three people can be witnesses and sign a will, or they can actually be judges and decide on the case and actually adjudicate the case right then and there. Now, if you hold like Rabbah, that as long as they're sitting there, the sick person can change his mind, well then, how could they adjudicate the case? Maybe he'll change his mind. In other words, they're all sitting down there, and they talk about, he says, here's how I want to divide my estate. And then they go on and they talk about the Yankees after that. And so the judge is like, okay, this we decided this case is closed, and they make a decision then and there. But then they're still sitting there, and then the guy in his deathbed says, no, I changed my mind. Well, this is a problem, because they already adjudicated the case. They already gave out a verdict. This is you can even write the things. Okay, you get this, you get that, and then the sick guy is going to change his mind. So it doesn't make sense that you have all that time. There's got to be a sooner end, and so it makes more sense if after he finishes talking about the subject, then that's it. So that's a proof for Rav Yosef. Amar Rav Ashi, Amrita Dishmata Kamed Rav Kahana. Rav Ashi said, I repeated this discussion that we just had before Rav Kahana, and I asked him a question. I don't understand this proof that Rav Yosef brings. Or Rav Yosef minicha lechush dilma hadarbe. Even according to Rav Yosef, we could ask the same question upon him, because what happens if they renege on it? In other words, they're sitting there in the session and they're still talking about the matter, and so the judges are there and the judges adjudicate, but they didn't talk about a different subject yet, right? So now they adjudicate it, they decide, bang the gavel, okay, you get this, you get that. But since they're still talking about the same subject, the guy in his deathbed could say, oh, I changed my mind, and then you'll still have the same problem that he's changing his mind after the verdict. So in order to explain this law of Rav Yehuda according to Rav Yosef, you have to say that they were talking about the subject of wills. Then they went and talked about the Yankees, and then the judges said, okay, well, since they went on to a different subject, that means that subject is closed. He cannot change his mind anymore. And so then they will adjudicate and give the verdict after they change subjects from one to the other. Since you have to say that anyway for Rav Yosef, we could give a similar answer for Rabbah. Here also we can explain Rav Yehuda in accordance with Rabbah by saying that they were sitting down, they came to visit him, and they had a session, and they were sitting and visiting him and talking about various matters for 2 hours. And they talked about the will, and they talked about the Yankees, and they talked about lots of other things. And then they got up and left the room. And that's when the three people adjudicated, they sat together, and they made a verdict. And so once they got up, since the deathbed guy cannot change his mind anymore, that's how they did it. So no matter what, you're going to have to say that they're not going to give the final verdict while they're actually talking about the subject, while the sick person can change his mind. It has to be after some point, either after they close the subject or after they get up and move. And so either way, it's totally fine. So it's not actually a proof for Rav Yosef. Now, even though there's no proof for Rav Yosef, nevertheless, Rav Yosef besadeh inyan umechesa. The halacha nevertheless follows Rav Yosef in this case and two other cases. Our case is called inyan, that as long as they're talking about the same subject, they can renege on the deal. But after they close the subject and talk about something else, they cannot renege on the deal. So that's the second halacha here. The first one is besadeh, is something that we spoke about all the way back on Daf Yud Bet Amud Bet. That was a case where someone dies and he leaves, let's say, 3 sons. And so three fields that they divide the field into 3, that they're all going to take a piece. Happens to be that one of the fields is near the fields of one of the sons. So that son says, listen, this field is nearby my field, so it's more convenient for me to have fields adjacent. So he makes a claim and says, I want to take that particular field that's close to my field. So one opinion in the Gemara there says, that's a good claim, and he gets that field. Rav Yosef says, no, not necessarily. The other brothers can say, hold on, that field that you're claiming is actually worth more than the other fields. It's higher quality. So you don't just get it just because it's near your field if it's higher quality. And the halacha follows Rav Yosef in that case. And also in a case of half. This is a discussion coming later on in the Masechet. This is talking about a case where a husband says, I want to give this field, he tells his wife, to you and your sons. And so when he says that, how much goes to the wife and how much goes to the sons? Rav Yosef says 50-50. The wife gets half and the sons get half altogether. They have to split a half. The other opinion says, no, the wife gets the same share as all the other sons. If there's 3 sons, everybody gets a quarter. The wife gets a quarter and each of the 3 sons gets a quarter. Halacha is like Rav Yosef, that the wife actually gets 1/2. Okay. We now move on to the third clause of the Mishnah that said, Ha'isha et bena, a woman who dies bequeaths to her sons, but not the other way around. And also, a woman who dies bequeaths to her husband, but not the other way around. And also, if someone dies, then he can bequeath to his sister's children, but also not the other way around. We ask, ha tu lamali, why do we need this entire third clause of people who bequeath but do not inherit? After all, it's a repetition of the second clause of people who inherit but do not bequeath. Ha tana le resha, ha'ish et imo, va'aish et ishto. In the second clause, it says that a person can inherit from his mother but not bequeath to her, and so too a husband inherits from his wife but does not bequeath to her. So this is exactly the same information that's in the third clause. Why do I need the third clause if I already know all of that information from the second clause? And the answer is ha kamash ma'lan deisha et bena dumya deisha et ba'ala, because the third clause wants to add some information that tells us that the same way that a woman bequeaths to her son is similar to the way that a woman bequeaths to her husband. In what way are they similar? Ma isha et ba'ala en abal yoresh et ishto bakever, af isha et bena en ben yoresh et imo bakever, lanchil lachin min ha'av. Just like regarding a woman and her husband, the husband does not inherit his wife when he is in the grave. What does that mean? How can you inherit something when you're in the grave? Well, actually, in general, you can inherit in the grave as follows. Let's say someone has children and grandchildren, and then all of his children die in his lifetime, and then that grandfather dies. So where does the inheritance go? It goes to his grandchildren. It skips over that generation. How so? Well, you know what? Even though the children are dead, they, so to speak, inherit in the grave as if they were alive. If they were alive and inherited, who would it go to after they died? It would go to their children, the grandchildren. So therefore, even though those children are dead, nevertheless, we make believe that like they inherit in the grave, and it goes to whoever inherits from them. This is the same principle that applies if someone dies without children, it goes to the father. And then if the father is dead also, it goes to whomever would inherit that father, meaning it would go to that father's sons, the brothers of the deceased, or to the uncles, and so on. So in general, most people can in fact inherit in the grave so that it goes to their next of kin. But that does not apply to a husband from his wife. If a wife dies, then the husband only inherits if he's alive. If the husband dies first before his wife and then she dies, we don't say, well, since it would have gone to the husband, well, after the husband, who would have inherited from the husband? Let's say his sons, his father, his brothers. That could be not necessarily her sons. It would go to them. We do not apply that rule when it comes to a husband inheriting from his wife. Only if he's alive, then he takes her stuff. But if he's not alive, then it will go to her side, her children, or if not, her family. That is a principle we know already. By adding this third clause, it's teaching us that is true not only for husband and wife, but also for a mother and a son. When a mother dies, then the children inherit. That's a law that we know. Here's the chidush: her son will not inherit if the son is in the grave. A son can only inherit from his mother if the son is alive. If the son dies first and then the mother dies, we don't give it to the son's brothers, meaning to the paternal brothers, if she has many children, then it'll go to all of her children. The mothers, if she has many sons, it'll go to all of her sons. But let's say she has one son, and that son dies, we don't say, well, since the son, if he were alive, it would have gone to the son, and then if that son died, it would have gone to the son's brothers, or the son's, let's say a son didn't have children, and only had paternal brothers, it would go to them. We don't say that. If the son is alive, and inherits, and then dies, yes, then it'll go to that person's paternal brothers. But if the son predeceased his mother, and then the mother died, then the son does not inherit in the grave, it does not go to the paternal brothers. That's why we need the third clause to teach us this law, even though regarding the basic inheritance that these bequeath but don't inherit, although that we would know already from the second clause, but the third clause comes to add to us that in these cases there is no inheritance in the grave. Next, a very, very interesting opinion. In the halacha, Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Shimon. Debar Torah ha'av yoresh et beno, v'isha yoreshet et benaha. Shene'emar matot, makish mate ha'em le'mate ha'av. Ma mate ha'av? Av יורש את בנו, אף מטה האם, האישה יורשת את בנה. Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Yehuda the son of Rabbi Shimon. We're going to see in a second that Rabbi Yochanan is going to question this very tradition. And he says something very surprising. According to Torah law, he says, just like a father can inherit from his son, right? If a father has a son and the son doesn't have children and that son dies, then the father inherits his son. That we know. So too, a mother can inherit her son. This is a big chidush because in the Mishnah, our Mishnah and in all the derivations of our Mishnah, we always saw the opposite, that a son can inherit his mother, but a mother cannot inherit the son. But this opinion says it goes both ways. And even has a source from the Torah, because the pasuk says matot in plural, and this word comes to juxtapose the tribe of the mother with the tribe of the father, that they are equal in the law. And just like regarding the tribe of the father inherits the son, so when it comes to the inheritance of the father's side, a father can inherit the son, so too the same thing is with the mother's tribe, that a mother can inherit her son. So there you go, there's even the proof. So that's what Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Yehuda ben Shimon, and then he asks a question on that very halacha. Itibe Rabbi Yochanan le Rabbi Yehuda ben Shimon. Haisha et bena, v'haisha et ba'ala, v'achaim manchilin, ve'lo nochalin. Rabbi Yochanan says, how could you say that? Look at our Mishnah that says a woman bequeaths to her son, but not the other way around. And that's where our question is from. But we quote the whole thing, that a woman also bequeaths to her husband, but not the other way around. And a person can bequeath to his sister's children, but not the other way around. So here it says that a mother bequeaths to her son, but a mother does not inherit from the son. So how could you say this halacha against our Mishnah? And Rabbi Yehuda ben Shimon has a surprising answer. Amar le Mishnatenu eni yodea mishnah. He says, this Mishnah, I don't know who taught it. I know I have this tradition. I even have a source from the Torah. It says matot, and the Mishnah, we thought this Mishnah was like accepted by everybody. It seemed like the halacha, and all of a sudden he says, this Mishnah, I don't know, anonymous. I don't know who taught it. Not sure about it, but this is a halacha that's different. Okay, very interesting. So now we don't even have an author for our Mishnah, but let's suggest one. Maybe the author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Zechariah ben Hakasav. He said back on Daf Kof Yod Aleph that we do not make a derasha regarding matot. The other opinion in that context did make a derasha of matot, made that juxtaposition, and said that the law regarding a mother's family is the same as a father's family, that just like when a father dies, the sons inherit first, and only if there's no sons, then the daughters get. So too, when a mother dies, the sons inherit first, and only if there's no sons, then the daughters inherit. That was the other opinion against Rabbi Zechariah ben Hakasav. In that context, Rabbi Zechariah ben Hakasav says, I don't make a juxtaposition because of the word matot. And therefore, he had a very interesting law that says, it's true, when a father dies, it goes to sons only. And then if there's no sons, it goes to the daughters. But if a mother dies, then the sons and daughters inherit equally. They all share it. Even if their son's alive, the daughters also inherit alongside their brothers, because he rejected matot. So just like over there, he rejected a derivation from matot, so too here, Rabbi Zechariah ben Hakasav, if he rejects this derivation from matot, then he would not agree with this derasha and the law that is derived from it. And so our Mishnah could be the opinion of Rabbi Zechariah, who doesn't have this derivation, and therefore would say that a father can inherit from a son, but we're not going to compare that to a mother. No, a mother cannot inherit from her son. Okay, good. So our Mishnah could be the opinion of Rabbi Zechariah ben Hakasav. Why didn't they answer that? And we explain, no, it cannot be. Lami tokma matnitin ki Rabbi Zechariah ben Hakasav. Tekatane ubne achot, vetana bene achot velo benot achot. Ve'amrina nema hilchata v'amarav sheshat lekadem. No, in fact, our Mishnah cannot be according to Rabbi Zechariah ben Hakasav, because our Mishnah teaches that the sons of a sister inherit. If someone dies, and let's say they don't have other relatives, so the paternal sister would inherit, and and let's say that paternal sister is also not alive, then the children of that paternal sister can inherit. That's what our Mishnah said. And we have a Braita that explained our Mishnah and said it's the sons of the sister, but not the daughters of the sister. And we say, how does the halacha apply? Why shouldn't the daughters inherit? If that sister has no sons, then the daughters should inherit. It just follows in line, and that's in general. A woman who dies and doesn't have sons, it does go to the daughters. So Rav Sheshet explains, that's just that the sons precede the daughters. Yes, if there are no sons, the daughters will inherit, but what the point of this saying, bnei achot and not benot achot, is to say, if a man dies and he doesn't have any other relatives, but he has a sister, and then that sister had died, then it should go to the sons first, her sons. If she doesn't have sons, then it goes to the daughters, and so that is the halacha that we explained. That's how we explained the Mishnah. And ve'isal kadatech matintin Rabbi Zechariah ben Akasavi ha'amar echad ben ve'echad bat shavin b'nichseh ha'em. And if you say that this Mishnah is the opinion of Rabbi Zechariah ben Akasav, well, that would help with the halacha that we just started with regarding a mother bequeathing to her son, but a son cannot bequeath to a mother. A mother cannot inherit from her son. That part of it would be consistent with Rabbi Zechariah ben Akasav. But then you'd have a problem with this clause, because Rabbi Zechariah said that sons and daughters inherit equally in the mother's property. And in our Mishnah, according to this Braita that explains our Mishnah, they do not inherit equally. Right? This case of sister's children is really just a more complicated version of a mother dying. And mother dying, then, according to this, goes to sons first, and only then to the daughters. But Rabbi Zechariah says that sons and daughters share equally when a mother dies. So this Mishnah, although it fits Rabbi Zechariah in one case, does not fit Rabbi Zechariah ben Akasav in another case, and therefore he cannot be the author of our Mishnah. Okay, so fine, he cannot be the author. We're left without an author. But now we ask, whoever this author is, v'tanadidan, mimanafshach, what does the author of this Mishnah, whoever it is, what can he say? I darish matot isha namet tirash et bena. I la darish matot ben dekodem lebat b'nichseh ha'em minale. If he does make a juxtaposition of matot, then he should agree with the darasha that we just started with, that a woman also should be able to inherit from her son. And if the author does not make this derivation based on the word matot, then he should say that sons and daughters inherit equally. Where will he get a derivation that a son inherits from the mother first, and only then the daughters get it, right? Because the derivation was from matot, the derivation against Rabbi Zechariah ben Akasav. So if he agrees and thinks that matot is a derivation, well, then how is he going to know that sons only inherit from a mother before their sisters? And so the answer is le'olam darish matot v'shaneh hachad amar kera v'chol bat yoreshet nachala yoreshet ve'ena moreshet. In fact, the author of our Mishnah does make a juxtaposition from the word matot and compares a father and a mother, such that he will agree that just like when a father dies, the sons get first and only then the daughters, so too when a mother dies, the sons get first and only then the daughters. So he has a derivation from matot, and that's exactly what our Mishnah says. Now, regarding the other question about a mother inheriting from her daughter, we said if you do have matot, then we should say, just like a father inherits from his son, so too a mother also should inherit from her son. What about that? If you have matot, then don't you agree with that law? And the answer is no. Here it's different, because if we look at that very pasuk that talks about the word matot, it starts off echol bat yoreshet nachala mi matot, any daughter who inherits an inheritance from matot, from the plural. This comes to teach us that a daughter can inherit from multiple matot, matot, meaning a daughter can inherit from her father or from her mother, but only inherit, not bequeath. That's the derivation here, right? Yoreshet ve'ena moreshet. So you're right. If you only had the word matot, then you would learn that a mother and father are the same, and a mother and a father both can inherit from their children. That's what you would have thought. And therefore, the rest of the beginning of that pasuk that says a daughter inherits from two, meaning inherits from both a father and a mother, but not the other way around. A daughter can bequeath to her father, but a child cannot bequeath to the mother. A mother only can bequeath to a child, but a mother cannot inherit from that child. And that, we don't know who the author of our Mishnah is, but they can reconcile all the different derivations of the Pisukim in that way. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.